Hey everybody, Magellan here, welcoming you back to another episode of Studio 60 on the SunsetChatz. As you already know by now at this point in the season, this particular series of episodes was recorded in the early months of quarantine, which means that we might be referring to either current events or just overall truths of living that might feel slightly dated. So if there's any sort of, why is there that going on? That's why. Stick around until the end of the episode for some this time specific announcements, but otherwise, let's get on with the show.
Live from Studio 60 on the SunsetChatz, it's Wednesday night in quarantine.
Hello and welcome to Chats, a television podcast, season 10, Studio 60 on the SunsetChatz. My name is Alan, and I'm joined by a man who lives and dies on Friday night. He feels like success in a 60-minute podcast is akin to love, and he fears failure like it's death. He's every bit as damaged as I am. It's Magellan.
Holy shit. Oh, man. That one...
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
You know, a lot of the intros are just sort of fun flights of fancy.
Yeah.
And then some of them are so close to home as to be almost uncomfortable.
Yeah, right?
And that was one of those.
Well, it balances out the ones that are like performatively nice. That occasionally I'm a little bit salty or sassy, Sandra, with you. But that's just a great line. I just think it's a well-delivered line in the episode, which we'll talk about.
I do too, yeah.
And I think you're a well-delivered friend. So hi, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
You can thank the doctors, right?
Thanks to all my healthcare workers.
I was delivered.
Oh, I see. Yes.
As a baby. I was a C-section.
Really?
Yep.
You know what they say about C-section babies?
That's why I'm so smart.
Yes. You know, folks, I'm actually also joined by the face behind Dilbert 27 themselves. It's Six from Scanlan Media.
You know how much starch it takes to make my tie do that? I work hard. God. I work hard around here.
True fact that I feel comfortable saying on a podcast, especially one that won't come out for X number of years. My the head of my department is basically a real life Dilbert, and it's very funny to me. He doesn't wear a tie every day, but he absolutely acts and kind of looks like Dilbert. It's really fucked up.
Oh, no.
Yeah, shout outs to him.
You ever think about how the artist behind Dilbert is a bigot and his trademark thing is that he doesn't know how to draw a tie?
Yeah. So instead of drawing a tie, he just draws a big swoopy. Hey, everybody. It's Studio 60 on the SunsetChatz, where we don't dunk on Scott Adamson all the time. We instead dunk on a man who grew up in sunny... I want to say California, actually. That would be really funny if you
I think we looked this up before.
Where was he born? So I can make jokes about where he was born or something?
I think we've looked this up before.
New York.
No,
New York City.
He was born in Manhattan to a Jewish family. His name is Aaron Benjamin Sorkin. He's 58 years old.
Yeah, we've looked it up before.
He went to Syracuse. Okay, well we're gonna dunk on him this week. Not as much as usual though. We watched 2 episodes of his cult classic one season and then instantly canceled TV show Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. The 2 episodes we watched this week were Episode 9, The Option Period, as well as Episode 10, B-12. The Option Period has a teleplay credit by Aaron Sorkin, story by Christina Kyung Booth and Mark Goffman, and it was directed by John Fortenberry. It originally aired November 20th, 2006. And Six, if you don't mind, could you tell me what happened in this episode?
Sure. Well, in this episode, after the show comes down, Matt discovers that Ricky and Ron are planning to leave and take the writing staff with them to write their adaptation of their Studio 60 character, Peripheral Vision Man, as a Fox network sitcom. Matt tries to discourage them from going since he thinks their show will fail, but Ricky takes his concern for condescension, claiming Matt is trying to hold him back. Harriet contemplates doing a lingerie photo spread in a magazine, which Tom and Simon advise her against for the sake of her professional image. Jordan and Danny wrestle with budget cuts as Jordan suggests either adding product placement or firing 15 staff members.
Not the staff. It couldn't be. Thank you, Six.
Yeah.
So I feel like both of these episodes were surprisingly dense for Studio 60, and it kind of, in my opinion at least, feels like the show is starting to hit its stride in terms of juggling plots. Not all of them are obviously good, but just in the craft and the way that it handles like going from beat to beat to beat and finishing really satisfying way, I think is better than it has been before. I know with Nevada Day, one of my main complaints was that besides the fact that we're kind of handling this whole like we're offset and we're dealing with this like B plot thing, all that was kind of sloppy. Both of these episodes, and especially the option period, really nail the thing we wanted Studio 60 to be, which is a show about making a show. And it's incredible that it took them 9 whole episodes to finally just do that. Right?
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, it took us going to Nevada in a private jet with a Chinese businessman and his violinist daughter, and also one of our cast members was arrested for speeding with his brother going to Afghanistan, and there was a joint in the pocket. And once we got all of that out of our system, now we can do the show that Studio 60 is supposed to be.
I think John Goodman, guest star of Nevada Days Part 1 and 2, did those episodes, and then he pulled Aaron Sorkin aside. He was like, "Listen, Aaron, great to be here. Love to be on the show. You're really fucking this up."
Yeah.
You're choking bad.
I don't ever want to have to be a delightful random side character in this show ever again.
Yeah.
I do Coen Brothers movies. That's the kind of weird that I'm for. This is not what the show is.
And yeah, once we get out of all of that weird like crime stuff, funnily enough, we are in the same day as Nevada Day, actually, as I understand it, because they were trying to get back in time for the airing, and this episode starts with that airing of that episode Friday. So everything is kind of hurried early on. But what I really want to dig into is all of the different ways that this episode really like does give you inside baseball without feeling overwhelming. The Ricky and Ron plot to start concerns the fact that there were 37 seconds of dead air in this episode of the show. And the reason they find out that is because there was a missing cue card because they wrote the script for the episode in 47 page format instead of 30-minute format.
No, the other way around. They wrote it in 30-minute instead of 42, whatever, something like that.
Right, which is very much like lingo for people who do screenwriting, but basically it means like the format and the pacing of the writing and where each scene ends and stuff and cuts. In Final Cut, like literally they mentioned that they like you guys used the wrong setting in Final Cut. Suggests that they might be writing a 30-minute pilot to sell to someone and theoretically leave Studio 60. I would never want to lose Ricky and Ron. That would make me so sad, and it did.
Did it? You were bummed to see them go?
I was crying. No, I was not crying at all. No.
I like those characters.
They're fun. They had a good thing.
I kind of wish they had done more with them clashing with Matt and revealing more of how he is like a tyrant and not good at part of his job. Like he's good at the writing part of his job, I guess, and he's really bad at the being a producer part of it. And it felt like they were the engine by which the show exposed that and got Matt to learn. But then in the second episode, we find a much more fun way to do that. So by the time the second episode rolled around, I was like, okay, Ricky and who? Ron and what?
Well, and I think part of the problem is that like that works. So there's this part in episode 9 where Ricky is going off and he's talking about like, it doesn't, like we never get anything on the air. It really doesn't matter how good what we write is. We could write the best sketch in the world. If it came from us, you wouldn't air it. And that is a fair criticism that rings hollow because the show has gone out of its way to talk about how much Ricky and Ron suck.
Right.
Yeah, and how Peripheral Vision Man is inherently a dumb concept and that they shouldn't make it, but they're going to do it anyways, damn it.
I mean,
and then by the end of the episode, it kind of tries to backpedal and be like, maybe we could support them and like help them make it good. They could make it good.
I mean, like if it had been the case where it's like, oh, they're like writers whose like style of comedy clash, like not just they clash with Matt personally, but also they do a style of comedy that doesn't jive well with Matt's sensibilities, but other people find them funny, and then also for some reason they are hung up on Peripheral Vision Man, which is like, oh, generally they're funny, but that sketch isn't funny, and for some reason they're hung up on it. This would all work.
Well, the issue there is that Peripheral Vision Man is explicitly like a sort of rib at SNL's like tendency in the 80s and 90s, like around the Chris Farley time, to do like single bit sketches, which are just not often like not funny, and were kind of like the like early death of SNL.
Sure.
It's like, oh, this character is weird for this one reason, and here's 3.5 minutes of the one thing that's weird about them.
Tom Hanks did Mr. Short-Term Memory.
Is that a real thing?
That's a real one.
Fuck out of here. That's Peripheral Vision Man is real life. So it's kind of like by removing Ricky and Ron, they're kind of saying this is a new show now. Like, we don't need that kind of sketch comedy in here anymore.
Yeah,
so it is a bummer.
To speak to what Six was saying, I mean, it goes back to the episode where the one thing that the writer's room gets on the air has plagiarism in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The show just can never criticize Matt Alby's writing genius. That can never happen for whatever reason. So it's sort of taking as fact, like, Matt Alby's just the best. He's just the best comedy writer in the whole wide world. And so anytime that it approaches criticism of him, if that comes in the form of criticizing his writing, it's like, oh, but wait. But he's the most amazing writer ever.
They literally have a part in the second one where the writer comes on being like, you told me that you were going to do all the work and you literally did none of the work. And he's like, I don't know. I'm busy. It's like, oh, Matt Albee sucks, dude.
Well, no, that's not really what it is in the second episode. He tells him, like, I'm going to do all the work. And then the dude is like, yeah, that's the problem.
The problem is that you're not. Yeah, it leads to a bigger conversation, like the thing that I quoted at the beginning about, like, you're not letting them get any successes, so they're not used to, like, getting a win ever.
Yeah, and I think the sort of problem with the Matt Albee character, I think we're talking a little bit about the second episode, and I want to talk a lot more about it when we get to it, but I think that does a really good job of exposing the ways in which his style of, like, I'm a one-man show negatively impacts other people and impedes their careers. But it's also like, I don't think it's humanly possible to write an SNL-length sketch show every week, even if you're Matt fucking Albee, you know?
By yourself.
I just don't. Because at least everything that I've heard about SNL is like they're there until 5 a.m. writing sketches or whatever.
Right.
Sounds like they're stupid and Matt Albee is a genius.
Right. And so this sort of idea of, like, we haven't gotten a single thing on the air since you've been here is like it sort of defies logic for me of how can the show be. And I guess, you know, in this episode they're saying, like, damn, the show sucked. But they don't really connect the dots that it sucked because of Matt doing all the work. It sort of ends up with Ricky being like, yeah, I know the show sucked. And you know what? I don't care. And then that's the problem, is that Ricky and Ron, like, don't give a shit anymore. But that's not the problem. The problem is that Matt is not doing comedy by committee the way that this sort of thing is supposed to go. So I think this episode gestures at critiques of Matt, and it gestures at ways in which he's growing by sort of, like, letting them go and changing his mind about, like, trapping them here at Studio 60. But it's still, everything that he does is he's sort of, like, giving a gift to other people. You know, he's like choosing to let them go, even though he knows it's going to be bad for them. And so everything that he does kind of has this air of condescension to it that I think takes some of the meaning out of, like, his growth from episode to episode.
And that's
right.
Well, that's part of what I really like. I really like the bit with Ron, because I think that actor I don't think the lines are that great, but the actor just kills it because Ricky has stormed out because he's decided that Matt is being patronizing, because he is.
Yeah.
But also Matt is genuinely trying to help and can't do it over his own condescension. Like, he's so used to being an asshole that he's trying not to, and he kind of doesn't know how. Yeah. And you really get that Ron can tell. That Ron is like, oh, you are trying to do a nice thing, and you're doing a shitty job of it, but, like, you are trying, and I guess I appreciate that. And it's such a nice, like, it's such a good bit of acting there.
Yeah, I love that moment, too, of Ron just clearly taking the advice, which is not great advice, Matt Alby's advice of, like, give him a sidekick. Call him, like dummy Tommy or so, whatever he says.
Well, I mean, generally just the advice of, like, don't have a show about one character who never talks to anyone is actually good advice.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I kind of saw a little bit of comedy in that scene too, because Ricky and Ron, like, Ron is talking about Ricky, like, this is a guy I've been working with for my entire career, just like you and Danny. It's kind of, and then I kind of saw that as, like, two men, like, one is the sidekick to the other one, and then he's saying, like, don't forget to include a sidekick, and I truly thought that was the show being like, yeah, you see how it works sometimes.
I didn't get that.
But I didn't want to like mention that. Yeah, it's sharp if it's true. I don't know. I can't, like.
I mean, that's sharp of you for getting it. I don't.
Well, thank you.
I don't know if that was sharp of the show or not, but I like that read.
Mr. Short-Term Memory could have used a sidekick.
He probably had one and then forgot.
Mr. Fish Oil.
Mr. Long-Term Memory.
Yeah. They complement each other perfectly, like the Wonder Twins.
Yeah, exactly.
In a way, it's kind of hard to tell in Matt and Danny who's the Ricky and who's the Ron. It
depends.
I think Matt's the Ron, and I think that's why Ron and Matt are, like, getting along.
Totally.
Because Matt and Danny are both hotheads, but Danny is definitely the hotter head. And Bradley Whitford,
Yeah.
I always figured most of the reason Magellan likes Bradley Whitford is because that's totally what you're going to look like in 20 years, and that's valid.
Oh, God willing, and the creek don't rise.
I think it's just because you raise your eyebrows and you're like, damn, Grandpa, all right.
I got a grampy fetish. Wampa wampa. So the main thing about the whole, like, people getting fired is because Jordan tells Matt and Danny that the budget cuts are happening due to the Macau deal, which they refuse to drop this plot line, which I kind of give them credit for, because they're like, no, this is, like, a lot of money that's being tossed in the air. Like, we need to not brush this under a rug and pretend it's not happening and affecting our studio.
So what was the logic behind, what are they spending money on in the Macau deal exactly?
They're doing, like, a big, like, city contract.
I'm gonna build a city in China.
Yeah, something. I don't know.
He literally said that line is, like, in one of the cold opens.
So the thing that's interesting about this, right, is there are layers to this, where it's like, okay, we're going to do product placement, and how can we justify the product placement to make it make sense in universe, right? Mm-hmm. And there's an additional layer of that because they're doing that for real on Studio 60 as well. Studio 60 was starting to have money issues and was trying to figure out, and they do real product placement for their own benefit as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And so the two layers of that.
I was wondering if all of the brands that they name in this conversation were product placement brands.
It's basically one wink away from, like, physically looking at the camera to realize that that's what's going on.
I mean,
like when he's like, "Oh, lace up your Nikes" or whatever he says. I was like,
excuse me, Nike? It was Adidas.
Adidas, yeah. I was like, did Adidas pay for that?
Well, what I really like, when he's talking about product placement and he walks and he gets a Snickers from the vending machine, it was like, that's Wayne's World?
Yes.
Like, what are we doing right now?
It's like a loud scene of the vending machine clunking and kerklinking, and then he's like, oh, Snickers.
As Mike Myers from off screen goes, I will not bow to any sponsor.
Yeah, it's cute, right? But there's no principled stand here. And it's kind of hard to get a read on, like, what exactly the take is. I mean, I guess it's just sort of Aaron Sorkin sorting through, like, we did this thing that I feel weird about, and I guess I still feel weird about it, but we need the money, so I guess we're gonna do it.
And, like, sometimes art and profit can work together. Sometimes capitalism does work.
Kind of. I mean, so the conversation, I think actually Jordan, or the actress who plays Jordan, whose name I'm frustrated that I can't remember right now. Amanda Peet. Is like explaining both to the viewer and Matt and Danny how product placement in television works. Because she says, there are commercials, and one of them is like, yeah, commercials are great because they're already baked into the language of television, which is like candy to my ears as a television podcaster. And then she's like, well, then there's also like, suggested product placement where like people like wear a thing. And then there's ones where like there's a plot line about the product, and like there's different levels of like how much money can you get from your product placement, and like what are the different tiers of that. And I thought that stuff was so interesting. But the argument is that one of them is saying, once it's in the actual show, it is affecting the sanctity of the writing. Like it's getting in the way of the show production, which it's not. I don't think it is.
Well, I mean, I think,
but it's a tough question.
Like, I mean, if you think about this as being like, we don't know how directly this is analogous to Saturday Night Live, right? But
yeah,
if you take SNL, and SNL does sketches where they're doing fake commercials, right? They're doing fake advertisements, and they're like, oh look, it's the Big Red is an old one from like the 90s or 80s or whatever, right? That's like, oh, this stupid toy. And then you go on and have an actual sketch where they actually do promote a real toy. That fucks everything up.
Yeah.
So there is, I mean, like, I think like the term sanctity is wrong, but let's pull a Danny Tripp here. I do think it messes up their street cred.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think it's this is an example of like a valid plot line that you can have in a show about people who are trying to do a sketch comedy show with some level of what's the word?
Sharpness,
Integrity?
shrewdness, panache.
Integrity is the word. Thank you very much. This is the kind of plotline you have in a show about people trying to do a sketch show with integrity, where to these sort of like rebel guys, it probably feels like selling out to have products placed in their show. So yeah, I think the plot is worthwhile, and I was interested in where it was going to go, but I think the thing that frustrated me about it is they kind of like find a convenient solution to it.
Super convenient. Super convenient.
Where like Danny doesn't actually have to make a choice. Cal just comes up with this. It's a cool idea that Cal comes up with, of like, hey, let's make it look like we're on the Sunset Strip on the set. And so there's like actual billboards of real advertisement, but it's like part of the tapestry of the set.
And I will give them
change.
I will give them credit. I am here in LA County. That's true. That's what it's like.
Billboards.
Oh, I mean, yeah. Especially downtown LA. That's just what it's like.
Yeah, it'd be like if SNL set looked like Times Square or something, right?
Yeah. I know like either the Colbert Show or one of the talk shows has like MTA signs and stuff in the background to kind of give the flavor of like, it's New York,
Yeah, so I think that's a cool idea, but it also sort of gives us a shortcut out of having to make the choice of like, we need to sell out to a certain extent to keep doing this, or like, no, we're going to take a stand and refuse to do this. And instead it's like, hey, we can have our cake and eat it too. Danny even says to Cal, this is both good and profitable. You know how I find that confusing, or whatever he says.
I feel like you might as well have been able to see like dollar signs in his eyes in that line. It was so weird.
Yeah. And then I guess it was cute when they go to Jordan and they're like, hey, we're going to do it. And they're like, we're going to screen the ads based on, their like
aesthetic, like
their aesthetic
the
and how much they evoke classic Americana.
Yeah.
So that was funny. I don't know. So it's a question that's worth discussing that I think ultimately ends in a kind of like, okay, that's cute, which feels like a very Sorkin thing where he presents what feels like an impossible conundrum, and then he's like, but look, I was smart enough to figure out the
it was actually very
option
simple.
C.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
true endings it.
I guess for once I feel like I'm willing to let this one go, because I do feel, I mean, like, the fact that they're set up on the Sunset Strip is from the premise of the show. It's from the title of the show, right? It's not like most Sorkin like ones of these where it's like they introduce this idea because someone offhandedly says it at the beginning of the episode, which we will get into next episode. Where it's like, right. Oh, the big like the big twist solution is introduced that episode and then used that episode. That this actually had some setup, and so I'm like, okay, all right, you earned this one.
Yeah, that's fair.
The other Matt Albee stuff that I found a little less fun kind of ties into an issue that I had with both of these episodes, which is the slow and gradual but obvious kind of flanderization of the character of Harriet. It feels like they've run out of things to do with her other than to make her fall in love with Matt again and to be kind of stupid. So the plot line in this episode, it's less egregious than it is in the second one. The second one is like,
I like it in the second one, but we can.
You're allowed to like it. As I wrote, all of my notes were like this. I don't like this. Magellan likes this over and over again. I just know you,
Magellan. Listen, we are here for you. We are not going to kink shame you on this podcast. It's fine.
Okay, I appreciate it. I do appreciate that.
Her plotline in this episode concerns a photo shoot, sort of a lingerie photo shoot.
It bugs me a lot more in this one than in the second one.
Yeah, well, this one is, so the lingerie photo shoot that she's thinking about going to, and you have both Tom and Simon telling her, basically walking around with her like gremlins throughout the set for this entire episode, being like, no, you can't do it. You can't do it, Harriet. It's a bad idea. And she's like, why? I'm allowed to make my own choices. And they're like, no, you don't know what you're doing. It's bad for your reputation. She says, she makes a lot of good points here, which are unfortunately couched in the fact that she doesn't seem to understand that people have religious fetishes. She cannot circle that square because she's saying what's wrong with me being devout? What are you saying? It's sexy that I'm devout. I don't understand that. And I'm like, how did you get this far in Hollywood without realizing that a lot of your career is based around the fact that you're attractive and also a devout Christian?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the main argument is if she does this, then those people are going to be mad. So she has to maintain her reputation. She wants to do her own thing. And the line that I did really enjoy from her was when she said, you guys are also exploiting me by having me be the token Christian on your show so that you can dunk on Red Wing states or on red states.
That was a pretty stark moment where Tom says because you're our shield or whatever he says, you make it so that we can point to you when we get criticism. And then she says, well, at least they pay me for it.
Right.
And then he's like, well, we pay you. And she says, to be funny. I really liked, I think that was maybe the only part of the whole plot that I thought was strong. And it's because Harriet is asserting herself in that scene and being like, fuck you guys. I know what I want to do, so I'm going to do it. And I think every other part of this plot is a man telling Harriet what she feels or what she should do.
Yeah, and I also really it is the most close Harriet has ever come to sounding like someone I actually know. Just the no, fuck you, pay me. It's yeah, no, okay, I'm on Twitter too. I get it.
If you're going to if you're going to tell me how to live my life, then pay me, pay my checks.
Yeah.
But yeah, and this is, again, all couched in this stuff of men telling her what to do and men not being able to contain their unbridled horniness for her because, this opens, the cold open is actually Simon and Tom walking in on her in her, with her shirt off and in her underwear, and then explaining why that's not a bad thing. And they're like, no, it's fine. We see you all the time. And she's like, yeah, when it's my choice, when I'm allowed to, when I'm when we're in dress rehearsal.
Right.
And then later in the episode, you get the sterling gold line of "We respect women in their underwear," which is fucking stop. Every time I like either Simon or Tom, they go and they do these moments where they become these little teen boy gremlins, and I'm like, no, stop.
Yeah, and also they say it so much, but it feels like every time they say, "Hey, don't do this," they're like, "Listen, I mean, we'd love to see you in your underwear. Hey,
right?
Listen."
You should get more naked. We'd love it if you were naked.
I'd love to see pictures of you in a bikini or whatever. But
let me open up my wallet. I've got a picture of how straight I am.
It's got my real wife, who is my straight wife.
Yeah. It's so just Tom and Simon throughout the whole thing, they kind of keep repeating themselves, and they're just doing this gross stuff. And when they walk in on her changing, they just stand there and stare at her.
Yeah.
And they are unfazed. It's just icky.
It's super icky. And what really is a bummer about this is it doesn't end with Harriet asserting her own independence. Really, it ends with Matt being like, I'm an atheist, but isn't it more Christian? What is the actual line? I should double check it, because she starts talking shit about him, and then he says doing the photo shoot just to get back at Women United is petty, and ultimately the least Christian thing that you could do is be petty. So you should not do the shoot, because that's what virtue's about, Harriet. You don't know. I know. I'm Matt Albee.
Well,
I was conflicted about the scene because it did have that intimacy of like people who've been together so long that they know each other, that Matt kind of knows her better than she knows herself. And
when Matt says that stuff, it's better than like when Tom and Simon are saying stuff, though.
Yeah, but it's not often that like she gets the one up on Matt Albee like that, so it feels mismatched. Because I feel like the show has almost always presented him as being in the right when they've had back and forths like this. Mm-hmm. But I did like the moment where he was like, you're not doing it because of Deborah Messing or whatever. You're doing it to get back at those people, the Women United in Faith or whatever. Yeah. And she's like, yeah, I guess you're right. I guess I am.
The part where she gets back at him is where she says, young girls look up to me, Matt, just like young boys don't look up to you at all. And that's great. That's a wonderful part.
And I also like that I like the sort of synergy between the plots where he's giving her advice not to be petty and then immediately goes and takes his own advice with the Ricky and Ron situation.
Right.
I kind of wish that he had told her about it, though, and gotten her advice, and so that she could have been like, hey, speaking of petty, but he just kind of like goes and solves his own plot for himself, which I felt like was a missing component of this interaction. Mm-hmm. But I'm increasingly buying into Matt and Harriet, because they're just, Sarah Paulson and Matthew Perry are just selling it so good. You know, they just look at each other with such little doe eyes, and they love each other.
And Magellan mentioned it, but I really do like in a vacuum, I really like the dynamic of like, you are everyone's talking to you about this thing, but like, I've known you long enough that I can be like, oh, you don't realize your actual motivation here, right?
Yes.
But yeah, the problem is, it comes in an episode and a series and from a creator who is just so consistently patronizing to women that it just doesn't work.
Yeah, all that context makes it hard to separate that scene.
Yeah, I have some notes about context, but I want to wrap up the discussion of the actual episode first, because boy howdy did I learn some fun things. But we have a couple of other brief moments. Lucy, one of the writers, as well as Darius, the new hire, are left as the only writers on the team left, besides Matt Albee, after Ricky and Ron take everybody with them.
You understand? I gotta protect the senior guys. You understand? Yeah. Come on. That's my Ricky impression. Come on, you understand.
It's a great Ricky, honestly.
Yeah, it's a different read. It's a different take on Ricky.
All the stuff about like unions and like how different people get hired and who's allowed to go with whom, I actually find pretty interesting. I thought like, I want to know about that. Like when you're a writer, like, are you part of your team? Because like I said earlier, Ron is like, I work with Ricky. Like we are just a duo. Like the two guys who work on Game of Thrones they come as a package deal. The Chatz kids come as a package deal. You don't hire one of us.
Right. I also did think it was interesting that whenever they negotiated their contracts, they sort of built in this trap door of like,
you take one of us, we get all the writers.
Well, like,
or that you get both of us.
No, that they could go and do Peripheral Vision Man. Like that's in their contracts that they, the only thing that they could go like write a pilot for was that. And so I don't know. I just thought that was a kind of cool showbiz thing of like them being shrewd and pragmatic and saying, just in case, let's kind of put this, break glass in case Matt Albee comes back, because they negotiated those contracts before Matt and Danny took over the show. Mm-hmm. So for a while they also, I guess, put that in all of the writers' contracts too. All of the writers could. It's like, yeah, we are totally loyal to Studio 60 unless, hypothetically, Ricky and Ron go and do Peripheral Vision Man, and then we can go join them.
Yeah, I really wish they'd done more with this, because I really find it amazing. It's a really fun bit of characterization that they don't do enough with, of this idea of these two writers who are, like, ostensibly, like, very skilled, professional writers who are just obsessed with this sketch that isn't funny.
Yeah.
Right.
That could be a really big
characterization. This is our cash cow. Yeah.
And I just, it could be such a great character thing for them if it had been a recurring thing where they're, like maybe if the relationship between them and Matt was a little less hostile and he'd come down and be like, what do you have? And they're like, I mean, we got Peripheral Vision Man. And he's like, oh my God, again? No.
Fuck.
Yeah, because we only really have it mentioned. I can't think of another episode it was mentioned except for the pilot, right?
Yeah, where Cal says they're just going to keep writing that until it's funny, huh?
Yep.
Yeah. Because it would have been fun for them to keep pitching it and for us to see clips of it. I don't know. Maybe we eventually see what it looks like. Maybe
I think we don't.
Hope.
As I understand it, we do not.
I think we should. I think it's time for the Studio 60 revival, but of course the Studio 60 name is cursed, so we need to get Aaron Sorkin to run a new season of Peripheral Vision Man.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
and it just starts on season 2, and we just have to figure it out backwards.
It's like Memento, but stupid.
Yeah. Do you ever think about what Peripheral Vision Man actually would be like? Like try and envision it for a second, Because
I guess it's just a superhero can only see things in his peripheral vision, or he has extra good peripheral vision.
Judging by the bumper from the first episode, it's the latter. Yeah,
it's the latter. He can see perfectly clearly in his periphery, so he kind of like has a wide lens all the time.
So I mean, you could do like he could be like wearing a superhero like costume, but the jobs he's getting is like, oh, he's wearing that costume and he's a substitute teacher, and they're like, hey, with your abilities, you could catch kids like slacking off in class. And it's the only job he can get, so he takes it super seriously. Or, I don't know.
Okay.
And then he's like a prison guard for an episode, and he's like, I see all the prisoners trying to sneak out.
It's funny, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's as good as anything on Studio 60.
It's honestly, it's as good as, like, remember, in the Studio 60 universe, SNL still exists. And so, like, it's as good as Night at the Roxbury or whatever.
Ooh, which got a movie.
The whole bit is, or it's as good as Coneheads. Didn't Coneheads get a movie or something?
Yes, it did.
Yeah, and it's just like they have cones for heads. Like there's been some dumb shit that's spun off of SNL.
Magellan, they're from France.
The Coneheads?
That's their... Oh, you haven't seen... let me indulge you with some Coneheads lore. So the thing is, obviously, they're aliens, right? And their heads are cones, and they behave strangely. And people comment on this, and are like, whoa, what is with you guys? Are you like aliens? Like, why do you act like this? And they say, we're from France. And everyone goes, oh, okay.
Dumb, but kind of clever. Wait, hold on. No, I'm just kidding. I was actually just looking up what was going on at SNL in 2006 just to get a kind of snapshot.
Yeah.
I mean, the Killers, you got Killers performing, you got the first time Jason Sudeikis ever did George W. Bush. It started in that year. Zach Braff hosted the finale along with Maroon 5, which really just kind of clicks in what you're thinking about.
That puts you right in the odds, yeah.
Molly Shannon was like coming back to the show with Linkin Park performing. Like just looking at the hosts and the musicians, you get like a really interesting image of it. They even had like Barry Gibb Talk Show came back because Justin Timberlake was doing digital shorts. Like this is like when Dick in a Box was 06 also. So SNL's like doing okay things, I guess. In 06. I had a lot of stray notes, unless anybody else has any big things in this episode they want to talk about.
I just on the topic of Aaron Sorkin writing women in a weird, bad way.
Yep.
I really, really resent just the entire Jeannie situation.
Yeah. The second episode opens with her ass shot of her taking a shot, and it's like chick. It kind of lingers a little bit of like.
The second one does.
I'm saying that's what I'm saying. The second one starts on that.
Yeah. But in this one, Simon and Tom are like, "Hey, we heard you're doing this shoot. We just heard it," and she's like, "Well, Jeannie," and Jeannie is just like. Jeannie's such a fuck up, and like, well, Jeannie's always going around not wearing a lot of clothes and stuff, and it's like, what are we doing?
Danny has said in the show, like, oh, Jeannie is like when we need someone to be sexy, but she's not that bright, and that's the way they treat the actress, and it fucking sucks. I'm sorry, I know, I am trying to swear less, but I gotta swear on that one. It's terrible.
It really sucks.
No, this is why I feel like I'm being a little bit harsher on the Harriet stuff than y'all are, because I've like really internalized not only the fact that that's like Aaron Sorkin basically going through therapy with his ex, but that I looked this up, y'all. Do you know who the ex was, Magellan?
Who?
Fucking Kristen Chenoweth.
Oh boy. Okay.
Which like suddenly clicks in so much into place, right? Christian.
Oh yeah, like you were on Broadway.
On Broadway, musician, like does music, everything. Like even they look kind of similar. You're like, I suddenly. Also, I don't like I can't. Now that I know who it is, and like I really like Kristen Chenoweth. I think she's a wonderful actress.
Yeah, she was on previous chat show.
On Pushing Daisies. She's amazing on Pushing Daisies. And I saw that, and I was like, oh god, he's just giving himself therapy with the Harriet stuff. So every time Matt Albee is like, Harriet, I got you. Like, I'll figure you out. And it's like, that guy broke up with that girl. Or she broke up with him in real life. Like, fuck.
And now
it just makes me feel weird.
Aaron Sorkin and Kristen Chenoweth together.
Yep. Oh, yeah, bud. So that's the whole thing.
Together. Aaron Sorkin's kind of cute together.
Guy. Nope, that's not true what you just said.
Aaron Sorkin is a good-looking guy. What are you going to say?
What? I can't agree. I won't give you that. I mean, you're allowed to have your own opinion, but
I think he's handsome.
Okay. The other notes I have here about like all the other different minutia of television production. I'm sorry for not letting you have a crush on Aaron Sorkin, by the way. I just want to roll that back.
Yeah, I thought I was told that I wasn't going to be.
That was me.
Shamed.
That was me.
That was 6.
All right. Well, and six didn't. So I appreciate that.
Good. All the minutia, like Jordan explaining the debt to equity ratio to people and why they need to fire people because if the debt exceeds the equity, then we're not taking in profit anymore. Which really is like a fancy way to say like we're spending more than we're borrowing more than we're taking in. Is really what it means.
That was hard for me to grok. It was. Yeah. I did appreciate like it was a good moment of Danny getting. Like, you know, just the usual, like, Sorkin way, but taking down a little bit of him being like, of course I know about that. And she starts to explain. He's like, I don't know anything. Okay.
I don't know. I just read a book once.
Yeah.
All the, like, finance stuff. And he talks about, like, we can fire the office team. And you realize that SNL or whatever probably has a whole team of people who are, like, interns and office people who never, ever produce or really work on the show, but are just, like, in the finance division of it.
Mm-hmm.
Or for the network, like all that stuff is so
definitely
that's multiple people's full-time jobs, and I kind of appreciate that either Matt and or Danny in this episode are like, we can't just fire people, like this is LA, you can't just like we could throw jobs out, we have the power to do that, but we shouldn't do that because sometimes we have morals.
Yeah.
And then so Jordan also explains pattern budgets, which I looked up because I thought that was an interesting concept. Basically, something I always think about is like, when you talk about budget on a TV show, is it budgeted like per season or is it budgeted per episode? Because you know how you'll be like, oh, this show feels like it ran out of budget in the end, like that classic chestnut. The way I understand it is that you get 2 kinds of budget for when you make a TV show. There's pattern and amort budget. And pattern budget is like, this is what it would cost to shoot and post a single episode of your show. And if you exceed this, then you dip into the other one. And amort budget is the one that's like everything else and stuff that requires like different, like this episode has costuming or this one has sets or titles or whatever. So pattern budget is like your standard budget, and you don't want to actually see that too much, but you often have to. Interesting stuff. I really do like this, like, behind the scenes. Here's what goes on behind when you make a TV show with stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we spent a good like a little over half an hour here, sort of being a little harsh on this episode. This was maybe my favorite episode so far.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It does everything it tries to do. It's not that ambitious, but that's fine. I would say they got all their ambition out with Nevada Day, and now they're like, let's just do a normal episode. What happens when we have to get advertising figured out? Okay, here's what happens. Great. Like, I learned stuff.
Right.
The characters did all the things they need to. There's plot movement and momentum. Like, it works.
Mm-hmm.
It just has some frustrating parts, and I know we tend to drill into that on this pod, but that's what we do.
Sure.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Some other lines I really liked. There's that surprisingly charming scene when Jordan is taking a phone call, and Matt and Danny, he's like, "You're about to get a call now," and then he points and the phone rings, and he like cheers.
I love that.
And she's like, "Shut up!" And they're like, "We're being quiet." It's so well acted.
I love that so much.
It really felt like almost improvised how good it was. It's like, wait, did they just like have fun doing this? Like, we're gonna act like children while Amanda Peet tries to be a person on the phone. Oh, it's great. Those two guys have infinite chemistry.
Such a classic, like, male best friends, but a little too much machismo in that best friendship, that they're like celebrating together and being like, yeah, take your show on the road, and like not making eye contact at all.
right. They're just posturing, kind of. Yeah.
I thought it felt really real, and it was really funny.
Absolutely. I think weird. Aaron Sorkin can write dudes extremely well. Not extreme. I mean, but like in specifics like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then my last one here is just that one of the lines Jordan tells Danny, because they keep trying to make Jordan and Danny a thing, is she's talking about how you run a business like hers short term, and she says, when I took this job, they told me to pretend that I have a year to live, which kind of like paints her character in a cool way.
She decided that. They didn't tell her. She decided that.
Oh, well, I decided to pretend I have a year to live. So like every decision shouldn't be about 5 years down the line. It should be about right now. Like, what do people working on and making the shows that I'm helping work on, like, how is this affecting them?
And it's interesting because I think on the one hand, like, that's like, oh, that's obviously bad for like running a company. That's like a bad, like, capitalism would frown upon that, right?
Of course.
But also, I think a lot of CEOs do that, where they only give a darn about short-term gains while they're there, and like, oh, whatever comes after, I mean, I'll be gone by then. Who cares? I just want to get credit for what I did in the days where I was there. So actually, right, I think that's not that uncommon a perspective.
The turnaround is so fast that as long as I can like leave a mark and get out, then and collect a check, I'm all good. I don't have to fix anything.
Right. Like there's no, like, capitalism doesn't drive anyone to fix structures. It drives them to make short-term gains.
For sure. But that's what I got. The other thing that I discovered between these episodes, because I watched one at work and the other one when I got home, was one of my favorite critics is Alan Sepinwall. He's like one of the premier TV critics. He wrote a lot of good recaps of Mad Men back when that show was airing. That was the main stuff I knew him from. And back on his blog, when this show was airing, he was reviewing it episode to episode. And I found his piece about this one in addition to the same week's episode of How I Met Your Mother. And it was a really weird experience, like, reading his thoughts on, like, here's what happened in How I Met Your Mother this week and why I thought it was pretty good. The show's getting weird. And then, like, Studio 60 sucks. I hate it. And all of his... one of the things that I found from that was he has a bunch of commenters, and someone was like... by now, based on the production of the show, they have to address the fact that Amanda Peet was pregnant while filming this show. And they did in the next episode. So it felt like real life finally, or the show caught up to real life, which was cool.
Mm-hmm.
So do we want to pivot and start talking about the next episode for this week?
Let's do it.
Fabulous. Well, the next one we watched was episode 10.
Oh, I forgot. Another bad moment was when, what's the writer lady's name?
Lucy.
Lucy just like kisses Matt on the lips to make Ricky jealous.
I wrote that.
Yeah, it turns out Lucy has never had a good moment or line, and I don't think it's her fault at all.
Yeah. You only know how to make... Yeah, that definitely felt like a... I don't want to just be like, that wouldn't slide today, but it's not even just that. It's just like, what was that? What was the...
Yeah, that was my feeling. What was that? Exactly.
What was the play here? Yeah, it's a weird moment. She gets somewhat more to do in the second one, but let's get into it.
Yeah, let's talk about my favorite episode of Studio 60.
Wow, I'll give you that. I'm going to allow you to have that opinion.
I think it is so far. Let's see.
So it's called B-12.
Rock Lobster! Oh, the B-52. I'm sorry.
Sorry, yeah. Close. One number off, bud. You're so close. B-12 was written by Eli Attie and Aaron Sorkin.
60 on the Sunset Strip.
There you go. Thank you. It was directed by Brian Gordon. Wait, not the Brian Gordon, right?
We used to do, there's an improv thing we used to do in college that, where you'd go, hey, Fred Schneider, what are you doing? And then you just had to say literally anything in that voice. I'm eating my Cheez-Its out of the box.
Oh.
Whatever.
College improv is wild.
Yeah, it's quite a time.
Yeah, Brian Gordon, he's not the famous person I was thinking of. He directed like a bunch of Office episodes and like comedy stuff. This episode aired November 27th, 2006. And Magellan, I would like you to tell me what happened in B-12.
In this episode, the cast has to get through the show despite being ravaged by a virus. And Matt has to get through the week with a new and much smaller writing staff. Matt calls in for the help of fellow former writer of Studio 60, Andy Mackinac. Jordan reveals to Danny that she's pregnant. Inexperienced writers Darius and Lucy have a sketch approved to air for the first time, only to have it pulled at the last moment due to its similarity with a real-life hostage situation.
I need to start by asking this because I tried Googling it and didn't find anything, but this will affect the tenor of this conversation. That's not a real thing that happened, is it? The hostage situation at the center of this episode? I don't think it's based in reality.
I don't think it's real, no.
That's fascinating that they chose to do that like that.
Well, I mean, they don't want to stumble into their own problem, right? Like the show is
right.
The episode is partially about how you can't make light of a real world like tragedy like right after the fact. They couldn't then actually do that for their show.
That would be terrible. That would be so irresponsible to make a show about events that just happened and affected millions of people who don't work on the show. What?
While talking about how you can't do that?
That seems like a terrible. That'd be crazy. Make a whole plot line about how they get it right when everyone else gets it wrong.
Maybe if you space it out by a couple of years, though, it'd be okay.
That'd be fine.
Jeff Sunset. We made the jokes.
If it wasn't clear enough, I'm definitely layering the newsroom theme slowly, fading it in after that.
Do you think the fact that the murder-suicide situation happened in Grosse Pointe, do you think that was a reference to the fantastic film Grosse Pointe Blank?
Yes.
Again, another note I had was this episode's about Grosse Pointe. Magellan's going to mention Grosse Pointe Blank. You're so...
I mean, if Magellan didn't, I would have.
Yeah, it's a good movie. It's a great movie.
I love that movie.
6 thoughts on the film of Grosse Pointe Blank?
I've never seen it, but I love it.
Oh,
okay.
You gotta see it. Do you know the premise?
It's really fun.
I think so. That's the surfers robbers one, right?
No, that's Point Break.
Point Break.
Okay, then no, I don't know the premise.
No, Grosse Pointe Blank's cool. You would like
Grosse
it.
Pointe Blank is so you've got John Cusack.
Oh, is that the one where he's a hitman?
Is a hitman, and then he gets assigned to do a hit in his hometown the same weekend that his high school reunion is happening. And wouldn't you know it, he decides to try to reunite with a high school sweetheart of his played by Minnie Driver. And so he's trying to get out of the hitman game and get into the life game with this woman that he loved a long time ago. And you know, some hijinks happens along the way. It's pretty fun.
There's some people who wear like president masks who rob banks, and they're surfers.
No, Point Break.
There's a whole scene where he like has a gunfight in a convenience store set to Live and Let Die, and I just saw a clip of Donald Trump in a mask factory where not wearing a mask himself,
of course,
where someone over the loudspeaker was blasting the song Live and Let Die.
King.
I don't know who did that, but that is fucking funny.
Oh yeah.
That is satire right there.
That right there is satire.
Yeah.
So I actually watched. I'll also say that I watched this episode basically twice. I got through most of it the second time before realizing that the back end of it is very straightforward because it has a non-traditional timeline, which is a pretty common thing in Sorkin shows. I think every Sorkin show I can think of has an episode that takes place out of order like this. So it specifically begins on the cold open of an episode hosted by Howie Mandel, who's doing a bit where Danny Tripp comes on the stage and pretends to be Howie Mandel in Deal or No Deal with the whole phone thing and all of that.
I will say
It's
that
cute.
as funny as a normal SNL celebrity monologue bit.
Completely.
Wasn't
Yes.
too bad, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Howie Mandel performs it really well. It was weird seeing him in this and remembering Deal or No Deal and how like dated to the 2000s that show feels now. Because some people who watched him then were like, oh, back in the 80s and 90s, he was in like movies and stuff. Because wasn't he? Yeah, he was in like Walk Like a Man, and he's also in like St. Elsewhere, and then Bobby's World was the cartoon that he did. So he did a bunch of stuff. Also, dude is 64 years old. It turns out that being bald means that you don't age.
Good trick.
That's my... But also having a flavor saver means that you don't age. That's the other thing. He hides the age in his little cool beard.
It's like a picture of Dorian Gray.
Exactly. If he shaves the beard, then he instantly ages really fast.
Yeah.
So we learn a lot of stuff. And again, like I said, it's kind of all portrayed like in the ending, and then we roll back all the way to the beginning at the beginning of the week. We have stuff about how like, oh, everyone's really hot and sick because there's a virus going on, which... Listen.
It made me uncomfortable.
It made me uncomfortable. I didn't feel good about it. It made me feel weird.
I didn't feel that bad about it until we get to the end. So there's like it seems like the only point of the virus thing is to get to the gag at the very end where
or the spit takes.
Yeah, because there's this scene, this like delightfully silly scene where Matt walks in on all of the actors doing spit takes. Just for fun. I thought that was very charming.
That's very charming. Yeah, I agree.
It was kind of like walking in on Aliens. It was, I mean,
how much they were doing it.
It was just bizarre.
But like, that SNL type people do shit like
Are
that.
nightmare humans? Yeah, I guess that's probably true.
They're like tired and bored, and they just want to make each other laugh. And they're like, "Oh, I got water. Like, let's just."
That's true.
That
makes sense. They are that desperate to make each other laugh. I get it.
When I listened to Amy Poehler's book, Yes Please.
Yeah,
there was some bit in there where either she or in the Seth Meyers chapter, he was talking about like bits they used to do together, and there's this one bit about like how Bill Hader would be like a funeral host in the future or something. And it's like they do shit like that all the time to crack each other up. So I thought that was pretty charming. But then the virus stuff, I guess the virus stuff serves two purposes, both of them dumb. The first is to get to the point where it's like Harriet's like, oh, I haven't gotten sick all week. And then they're like, oh, all right, yeah, everybody spit on her. That's hilarious. That's when I felt really uncomfortable because of our current context and how we are not at all feeling cavalier about viruses. And then
we might someday, maybe in a couple of years, we'll make jokes about like, you're going to get COVID.
I hope not. I mean, we will. We certainly will. We're making 9/11 jokes, so I guess.
Right.
Guess we will, but I saw the grisliest tweet today.
Tell me about the tweet.
Where the person was saying like, hey kids, you may not believe this, but 19 years ago, there was this event where 3,000 people died and the whole nation grieved, and we learned the names of the families of those who were killed, and we learned their faces, and nowadays 3,000 people are dying every single day and we don't know anything about them.
Well, okay.
And we're just talking about going back to normal.
Yeah, guess who's talking about going back to normal? Not us.
Not us.
Right. Not us. Yeah.
No. But to get back to the episode,
wait,
the other
sorry.
joke.
The second reason.
Yeah. What's the second one?
That the virus thing is happening is because you can't get a B-12 shot if you're pregnant, which of course, as soon as that's said in the episode, you're like, okay, who's pregnant?
Right. Yeah. It's. I think it's the most clumsy that setup has ever been used by Sorkin.
Absolutely, because this episode already like really elegantly weaves together a bunch of plot lines together, but then it's that part. It's Matt saying Danny can't take it because he's pregnant, which sucks ass.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's the main like the fatter guy who's one of the actors wearing a dress, and they're making jokes about him like wearing a dress and being all hot and sweaty, and they're like, "You passed out in drag. We're gonna remember that for the rest of your life." It's dumb. God, this show is. I mean, this show is just that's just dated. Like, I don't think it's not like that would never get written. Of course, it wouldn't get written today because this show came out a long time ago. Just a different time. That's like a thing I've been thinking about a lot as Majan and I are still in our prisoner season of chats.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when that show is like kind of racist, I'm like, I'm not excusing it at all. But like, I understand what the world was like back. It's fine. It's a different time. But anyways, so there's virus stuff. That's the least interesting plot.
Sorry, the thing about the like Matt saying that Danny's pregnant thing that was kind of amusing was Danny's response being just ignore him. He's trying to build momentum for this bit right now. If you just ignore him, he'll stop. And then Matt brings it up later and he's like, "Oh, you're pregnant." And Danny's like, "Still not funny."
That joke's not getting anywhere. I promise you it's not.
Yeah. I didn't expect Jordan to be pregnant. I thought it was going to be Harriet.
Well, dog
again.
So here, Magellan.
Yeah, hit me, dog.
You are here as our test audience for a person who likes this show.
Yeah, I like it.
And
I like this
you
episode.
are buying Jordan. Or no, sorry, excuse me. Let me restart. You are buying Matt and Harriet. You are invested in them. You are not invested in Danny and Jordan, so they need new stakes. They are trying to sell you on that.
I am invested in Danny and Jordan. They're just not doing Danny and Jordan.
Yes,
you know
they are.
They're like, I understand that they're laying the groundwork. I've seen TV shows before, but they're not.
Winks at camera. Winks at 8+ seasons of chats. I've seen TV shows.
But they haven't really like had them do a lean in, like, "Oh, are we about to kiss? Oh, Jordan." You know. So all right, I get what you're saying.
I mean, I think it's the Bradley Whitford like. I don't know if this is a Bradley Whitford thing or if this is an Aaron Sorkin thing, how he tends to cast Bradley Whitford. But when Bradley Whitford constantly playfully fights with someone, it's because his character wants to sleep with them.
Yeah.
Including Matt.
That's his, yes, correct. And true. I think that's, I mean, the real reason is because Amanda P was pregnant, as I understand it. But like still Jordan being pregnant is like, wait. And we're going to deal with that. We're going to find out with who and all that stuff, and it's going to be great. We're going to have a great time.
The thing about Bradley Whitford is I do think he's hot, and I don't think of him as sexual. Is that weird?
No.
I think of him as just a sort of beautiful man.
You may be surprised to learn, Magellan, that there are people in this world who can find things attractive without being sexually attracted to them.
Wow.
Tough for me.
They may be closer than you think.
Tough for me to envision.
Couldn't be me.
Oh, wait, my hands, they're disappearing. They're fading away. You have to believe.
The photo of Six is vanishing.
Please,
it's a picture of Charlotta falling off.
You have to clap. You have to clap.
Your parents in the past are finding each other attractive but not sexual.
Oh, no.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's pretty good. Sorry, Alan, you were trying to start a sentence several times and I kept interrupting you.
I don't know, man. This is y'all's podcast. I just host it. There's a lot of plot lines here. I'm just trying to decide which one is the most fun to talk about. The Harriet stuff is like, so okay. The Harriet stuff's brief, right? Here it is.
I liked it. I'm here to defend the Harriet stuff. Go ahead.
Stop defending all the bad parts and only defend the good parts, please. Stop being wrong. Me on Twitter. Harriet can't tell a joke. She literally, Matt explains it to her. He says, "You're the kind of person who like can deliver jokes given to you like a child. You can repeat it and you can deliver it effectively. But when it comes to telling the joke on your own, you don't understand what like composes to equal a good joke. That doesn't like work in your head." So she's trying to tell this joke about how a Jewish man calls his mom and he asks her how she is, and she says, I haven't eaten in 37 days. And he says, why haven't you eaten in 37 days? The reason is because I was waiting for you to call and I didn't want my mouth to be full when you called. That's the whole joke.
Alan can't tell a joke. It was 38 days.
Fuck. I guess I can't tell a joke. It's convenient that Matt tells the entire joke because Harriet spends the entire episode being like, so there's a man and he's Jewish and he hasn't eaten in 37 days. Wait, no, I mean 38. I mean, his mom is 38. No, she just cannot connect it. And that's the whole joke. That's her whole plot line. And that's what Harry gets to do this week.
It could be a cute character beat, but it's for a professional comedian. It doesn't make any sense. If it was for Matt's assistant, like, okay, sure. She tells jokes every day. She tells jokes for a living.
All right. So here's where I come to the defense of this. First of all, it is a really strange setup that she's like, hey, I became a member of this society and now for
Not
some
real,
reason
by the way.
I have to tell a joke.
Yep.
Why is that? At like an induction or something?
Well, sure, she's got to give like an induction speech, and it is expected that a comedian would tell a joke.
Okay. That setup is stupid. It's cool that she's like in a society, but to say like she has to open what perhaps I'm naming a specific joke book on my shelf. Awesome, cool. What is it called? Kids Cool Jokes? I don't remember. I have Kids Quickest Comebacks. That's a great joke book, but that's full of comebacks. Anyway, but cracking open a kid's joke book to tell a joke that's silly. But like, it's a different skill to tell okay, so a rabbi, a priest, and a whatever walk into a bar and blah, blah, blah. Because you do have to remember these like arbitrary details and you have the end of the joke in mind and you might sell it too early. Like I've had moments where I tried to do a joke like that and then I totally forgot the one thing you were supposed to know to get it, and I've had to be like, oh shit, I totally forgot. By the way, he's a
But she does
rabbit.
it for a whole day, dude.
Yeah, and also this is the person
it's a TV show. It's a little exaggerated because they need a running gag.
This is
funny.
the person who runs News 60. News 60 is
but News
entirely
60
these
jokes,
styles of joke.
But News 60 jokes are different jokes because it's like set up, punchline.
That's what
like
this joke is.
It's not, but it's like set up, punchline. You have to remember a couple steps. And also in News 60, she's reading it off the cards.
But she doesn't.
That was what I was going to say, was maybe she's the kind of comedian who's good at reading, like I said, like what Matt says, reading other people's jokes really well.
But why wouldn't she just make cards then?
Well, yeah, yes, good point. She should have made cards. I'm not going to argue with that. But I think I think Sarah Paulson sells it really well. I think it's really funny to watch her mess the joke up in a bunch of different ways. I think it feels like it fits with Harriet for me, where she's sort of like, she's funny, but she's not like, she doesn't really care about comedy in like a critical, like I'm Matt Albee and I'm going to make the most genius comedy ever kind of way. She cares about it in the like, it's good to make people laugh and bring people together. And
when asked, a bear said "rar."
Right, exactly. Like that,
That part's good.
That serves the purpose of a joke. People laugh. They feel good, and that's what comedy's for. And so for her, telling a joke that's about these like little mechanical pieces that have to interact exactly right, like that's not what comedy is for Harriet, And so in that way, it doesn't click for her because I don't think that she thinks a joke like that is funny. She just is doing it because she's like, this is what jokes are right. She's just doing it because she's like, this is what jokes are supposed to be, I guess. And so the fact that she's like having to fit this mold of what jokes are supposed to be, and that's like short-circuiting her brain, that also tells me a lot about her and adds to why I enjoy it.
Okay.
I'm cutting all my comments about Harriet out of my notes so that I don't refute any more points that have been made.
Go ahead. I mean, we can all have our opinions. I genuinely thought it like developed her character and it was a charming, refreshing, like running gag.
You know who would work for is Jordan.
I want Jordan to be funnier, to be honest with you. Yeah.
You know, yeah, Jordan would be, I guess, a better choice, right? Because she's like, I could tell a joke. Yeah. But they give Jordan so many, like, ditzy things to do.
True.
Like get pregnant, the ultimate. Just kidding. Wow, yikes.
Backing out of this joke. Not related.
I heard a joke book joke recently that's really good, by the way. Can I tell it?
Thank you for giving me a clean cut to get rid of that last comment.
I heard David Wayne tell it on a podcast recently.
Oh yeah.
He didn't come up with this joke, but he likes it. He goes, so I got a new thesaurus the other day, and it's terrible. And not only is it terrible, it's terrible, right?
Yeah,
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
It's pretty good, right? That's a pretty good one.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Alan's having an experience over there. Going through the journey of this joke.
I'm being carried through it. Me and my friend Dilbert27 from Ain't It Cool News.
What a stupid username. Come on. You couldn't think of a better one than that? Dilbert27?
First of all, it's 06. I also had a name number at the end. I was.
Where do you think 6 comes from? I was Dilbert 6, all right?
Yeah, let's be honest. Honestly, what it reminded me of 6 was, shout outs to the one true God, Legacy Derek himself. I guess, and for the listeners at home, by the way, Legacy Derek is a player that we met randomly in Final Fantasy XIV who was very bad at the game and complained a lot. But just the fact that they named their character first name Legacy, last name Derek is never gonna slip my mind.
Yeah,
I guess I can't come down on Dilbert27 because for a while my username in like games and stuff was Revan is cool. Like Darth Revan from KOTOR is cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's cool.
Pretty cool lady. It's true.
Revan is cool.
Pretty cool lady. Wow. Ow. Well, is she canonically a lady? Yes, she is.
Revan?
Wait.
No.
Isn't it the second?
The exile is canonically
Jedi
a lady.
exile is canonically female.
All right, great. Yeah. That's the KOTOR fan inside of all of us secretly.
Yeah. Well, listen.
I'm a fan of Jordan because there are 2 great moments from her in this episode. One is when she has a bunch of like consultants and people telling her who to interview with, and everyone is like standing up and like talking about her, like, "Wow, Jordan, you got to do all this stuff," and she's like, let's sit down, and everyone does it like that, and I was like, oh my god, like they really are good at conveying that Jordan can control a room sort of with like the way she talks and the way she presents herself, which is so uncommon in these like Sorkin shows. So I guess like the cartoonishly competent woman is not out there, but I like her a lot in these moments where she like asserts herself.
Well, but like it's a thing where like specifically like cartoonishly competent Sorkin women are like, oh, they're really smart. Oh, they got really good grades. Oh, they made all these achievements. They aren't like treated with respect.
No, they work work extremely hard, and they get
the closest anyone comes is people make lip service to talking about like, wow, I respect you so much, and they act without any respect for them. And so seeing a genuine gesture of respect where she's like, we should do this, and everyone just does it immediately feels unusual and good.
I agree. And the other great Jordan moment is when she does the Time magazine interview that she asked for, and because she had to take one of the people, and she said, I'll take Time magazine. And she just roasts this guy. She tries to be polite. She tries to just like listen to him and answer his questions, but she doesn't want to have it. And he's like completely berated by her. And she's like, you're terrible. I don't like people like you. Interviewers are all hairdressers. You're useless, and none of your questions are worth my time. And then him and the woman that's with him are like step out. And she's like, let's go, Bill. Which I only comment on because A, that was a funny part. And B, he has this like sort of, I don't know how to describe his voice, but he has a voice that reminds me of one of my coworkers whose name is Bill. And I was like, I literally was like, wait, this is weird. I don't like it when real life intersects with Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip at all. It just made me feel very weird.
I didn't like it.
Yeah. What did you not like about it? Do you not like this part, like the interview?
I didn't like the interview because so Jordan is a character who likes to be cute, and I like to be cute too. I am not saying that condescendingly. She likes to be cute. I get it. You like that. You like to have that dynamic where you're sort of throwing people off guard and you're making little jokes here and there and you're just sort of being fun and friendly. But part of being a person like that is you can tell when someone is not here for it and you turn it off. And someone like Jordan would not get to the position she is in without knowing when to turn it off. I don't believe it.
True.
She's too competent to not know how to turn it off, especially in a professional.
And we've also we've seen her turn it
does.
off.
It is hard to buy that she wouldn't understand how to like control the narrative of her own press at this point, right? Or at least give an interview where she just across the plate, like, hey, I'm a normal person. I mean, I do buy that, like, she's really pissed off that all this ex-husband stuff keeps coming up and she's starting to feel the pressure of like, I'm about to get fired. Jack Rudolph just yelled at me, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But she does go from like glib to fucking Alec Baldwin's character in that one Sorkin movie really fast. What's the one where he's like, I am God? What's that one called?
Gnocco and Gary Glenn Ross.
No. Where he's like, it's like the doctor who's like going through the malpractice lawsuit. God was in that surgery room. I am God. Whatever.
Yes, that's what's it called. It's for Malice.
Malice. Yeah. She goes from glib to malice really fast in that scene.
Yeah. It just like specifically he makes it very clear, like, okay, stop giving me joke answers, give me real answers. And it's just so hard to buy into the idea that she isn't able to figure that out.
Yeah, he seems like he's kind of on her side, right?
Or at least he's trying. I think, he's doing the thing that you do as an interviewer. I've done some interviews, not very many, but I've done a few. And it's like, you want to, at least in the moment, be a fan of the person you're interviewing. When you go to write it, you write what you write. It could be so totally different. But in the moment, the best way to get someone to talk to you and to be open is to appear as a fan of their work.
True. To get the most out of your role players, you be a fan of the players. Same thing. Same principle.
Totally. And then you say, okay, two things happen at the same time.
Several things happen at once. A rock falls on your face, and also the rock's name is Kevin.
I'm starting a clock. It's called You Have to Leave Now.
Kill the rock. It's your wife somehow. Okay, so we've talked about all the other stuff. We talked about Jordan, how that's going to go somewhere next week. It's kind of weird. It's kind of a bummer. She's pregnant. Wow. Oh my God. Danny finds out because she's like, don't give me the B-12 shot. Don't give it to me. And he's like, why? And then they both say it at the same time to end the episode. I'm pregnant. You're pregnant? Wow. Who's she pregnant with?
A baby. Who's she pregnant with?
Who did
it's
she
a
have
xenomorph. You caught her.
Listen. I'm being sass and I don't like it. I want to talk about the best. Also, what last like small thing before we talk about the best character in the episode. Why is Martha Odell back? What's going on with her?
I don't know, because they keep talking about a piece that she published on Tuesday, but then we never see the piece really or hear what.
Well, the piece. Well, you hear what the piece is about. The piece is about a movie that Tom Jeter recently starred in that is not doing very well at the box office.
It only made $5 million.
I'm making the most disgusted face I've made in years.
But they say that. They're like, who gives a fuck?
Why
did you write this?
Fuck.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, that's true, and it does make it like it doesn't work because it is really hard to buy that Martha Odell, this Pulitzer Prize winning author, would write a op-ed, one being like, oh, this person put out a movie and it's not making a lot of money, and then citing a random person from a forum. That just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's a complete straw man.
Ain't It Cool News is was a reputable source at the time. Is no longer.
Yeah, the comments in Ain't It Cool News, maybe not. But
yeah.
But yeah, it's just such a total straw man for Aaron Sorkin's. Like when Danny Tripp says, stop looking at your computer. Life's happening all around.
Shut
you.
up, boomer ass.
So dumb.
Boomer. I love that moment because then she's like, I'm reading an email about how Jordan's gonna get fucking fired.
Yeah. You interested now? That's your lady friend, bud. He says,
no.
Yeah, okay. What's it say? I want to know what it says.
Me. So to loop back around to the main plot, basically, what's happening in the background of this episode, the actual hashtag serious time event, is that a man has his family captive in Grosse Pointe, and by the end of the episode, we find out that he's killed them and himself in a murder homicide. Simon makes a comment later that he did it in the wrong order, of course. And they have a sketch that was written by Lucy and Darius about an incompetent hostage taker based on the whole T-Mobile thing. And they're really excited because they finally got to write this sketch, and they got to get something on air thanks to the help of Andy Mackinac, who's a writer / I guess consultant / acquaintance of Matt and Danny. He convinces them to let the sketch go to air, and then as soon as they convince them and they call all their friends and family and tell them we finally got a sketch on TV, it is pulled, and they handle it with a lot of grace, honestly. They're like, yeah, I'm not going to fight this. That's a bummer, but that's how life goes. Nothing but good praise to the actor who plays Andy Mackinac. It feels like they actually finally got somebody who acts like a TV writer in the show.
Good.
It was so refreshing. It's like, this is what the show could be. He was that moment where he's my favorite Studio 60 character that's shown up. This is my favorite Studio 60 subplot that's happened because it's just about what it's like. It's just about the thing. We're doing what the show is supposed to be about. That moment when he comes in, and it's that the contrast of Matt at the beginning, like yelling at them across the table, doesn't know how to talk to people, doesn't know how to manage, doesn't know how to like inspire people. He just scares them. And then this guy comes in who's like so detached from life to the extent that he's the most tuned in to what's going on out of anybody. Mm-hmm. And he sits down and he's like, I got it, Matt. Like, they get it. Let's start by sitting closer to each other. It's not a question. It's not a negotiation. He's like, I'm here to just do what you need me to do. And I ate it up. I loved the whole plot from that moment onwards.
It's so good because both as a character, but also in the context of the show, he exists to just like vacuum up humor and be like, no, there does not need to be humor here. Come over here. Get writing.
Do the work.
Right. Yeah.
You know what's brilliant? Well, first of all, yes, the scene John's referring to when he says we should all sit closer is to deliberately contrast an earlier scene where Matt is trying to talk to Lucy and Darius, and they're on the other side of the room. And I noticed because he kept being like, huh? Can't hear you, what? And that's like the dumb recurring joke. No one ever like doesn't hear each other on TV shows unless it matters. And it does matter here, but I just thought that was interesting. And no one on like Sorkin shows ever says, which again, I think if you're writing a script, you would never put an into the thing. But I wonder if they like tell their actors like, don't ever miss your words because every single beat has to be perfect or how that works. So what's amazing about this character, I'm so happy he's coming back. I'm so excited that he's staying on and he wants to do more episodes with them. That's fantastic. That guy is played by Mark McKinney, who sketch comedy fans will recognize from Saturday Night Live from 1995 to 1997, as well as being one of the main cast members on Kids in the Hall. So Mark McKinney like absolutely knows his shit. They got a dude who knows how to do sketch comedy. And you'd think that would mean like, oh, he's really wacky and friendly and nice. And it's like, no, he's ultra depressed. He's what an actual comedy writer is like. They hate their lives. He's like, if you're doing it right, you're drinking yourself to sleep every night and you have no like positive view of yourself. That's the way it works.
Well, also his wife and his kid died, right? Like some shit has happened to this guy.
I didn't catch that actually.
Yeah, they say it. Matt says it like he just did a translation of some play into Dutch that was written in English, and it's like, they do some joke about how like, the prose really soars in Dutch, and I thought that was well delivered, a bad line delivered well by Bradley Whitford. And then they have this whole back and forth where Matt tells Danny that what happened to him, that his wife and his kid died, and Danny is like, oh God, that's awful. Like it's a really real moment of, oh wow, that's terrible. And so they bring him in, and he's this sort of like specter of depression and death. But because of that, he's just blunt in a way that they need. He doesn't dance around anything. I adore the moment where he goes up to Matt and he's like, all right, I'm leaving. And Matt's like, okay, for like an hour, or no, I'm just leaving.
I don't want to work here anymore.
Yeah, you're wasting their time. Like, they're never gonna try because they know that you're just gonna do it for them. So I'm just gonna go.
Right.
Yeah. And that really is like he takes the sort of dad teaching his kids to swim approach of
Yes.
they're never gonna learn how to work hard to be funny until they truly bomb and are so embarrassed by just a dead pin drop silent room that they say, okay, well, we can never let that happen to us again.
Right.
And the scene with after the dress rehearsal, where first off, it is like right outside the theater of them being like, "Oh God, we bombed." He's like, "Yep, you super did. That was pretty terrible. You did a really bad job." And then, and that's like decent. But the real treat for me is when they go back to the writer's room and they're like, "Oh God, what are you doing?" He's like, "Well, I'm gonna lie down, but you do whatever you want."
Yeah, chill.
Yeah, and they're like, we're going to take another pass at it. And he's like, yeah, I'm sure the 23rd time that you do it is going to be great.
So mean. It's funny because he, like, the dad thing is spot on because he's mean, but in a way that's actually really, like, beneficial to their growth, unlike the way that Matt Albee treats them, which is like, let me handle everything. Stop. Like, if you just suffer for long enough, you'll be good. It's the very, like, capitalist view of, like, you're just going to have to grind for it. And this guy's like, no, they need to win sometimes. And they need to win it. Like, they need to get a sketch to air and have it suck and have it booed off the stage. Because what they need to realize is, like, getting the sketch on there isn't the thing you want. You really want to, like, make something people give a shit about. And if you keep telling them, like, none of this is getting on air, none of this is getting on air, A, they'll never know what's funny, and B, they will never have a taste of that, and they'll always be like, well, why would I care if I'm never going to make it on there? That's how you burn writers really quickly. That's exactly the truth. Yeah, and it's a
really, you know, if I were someone who, like, was teaching teachers how to teach and was using TV clips to do it, there is a conversation to be had here in, like, how does Mackinaw's approach differ from Matt Albee's approach, where Matt Albee's sort of like, he gives them the premise, he's like, yeah, they're not actually going to do it, like, I'm going to do it for them, I'm going to round up for them, if they mess it up, I'll fix it. And so if you're a student who's in a classroom where you know that the teacher is going to, like, fix your answer for you or, like, do all the talking, then you're not going to try and you're not going to learn anything. But if you're in a room with a teacher who's like, yeah, Alan, go ahead, and then you give your answer, and if it's wrong, they're like, no, that's not right. Or they just sort of wait for you to figure it out and they don't give ground. Kids learn in a room like that. And they care about learning in a room like that because they can see that, like, if you know stuff, you get to display that. And if other people know stuff, you learn from them. So it's just, I really appreciated that this episode showed a significant kind of deficit that Matt Albee has, and how important and meaningful it is for other characters to have that deficit addressed. And yeah, I think that it applies to teaching, it applies to parenting, it applies to any sort of, like, mentor relationship, really. Yeah.
I love it. I think he's fantastic. And again, it shows when you actually get people who've worked on sketch before to be on your TV show, like, and really drill down on the fact that it's not just that these people are all misanthropes, but you got to love them. It's like, no, sometimes they suck, but they say the things that people need to hear. And that's what makes it good.
And then the two other things that I really like about it are when they learn that their sketch isn't actually going to be on the air because of the circumstances. And Andy Mackinac is like, yeah, they're pros. It's another part of their victory, you know,
right? That
they realize, like, oh, the thing that mattered was that we made the sketch. That was the part that actually meant something. And getting it seen by our family is cool, but the thing that matters, like, we worked our asses off and we did it.
And Matt in that moment is about to walk back the progress. And he's like, no, I'm so sorry. Oh God, this is so terrible. Oh, how could you possibly? And he's like, no, listen, they'll be okay. leave it alone.
Yeah, leave it alone.
Yeah.
Let them go back to work.
And then the other part of it that I love is when he's leaving for the night and he's like, I think I had fun. I'm going to come back.
I was so glad.
Yeah. And Matt and Danny are like, yeah, one more week. And he's like, yeah, one more week.
I'll call now.
I adored that.
Don West voice from the newsroom. We did the news.
Yeah.
God.
I was really bummed that ultimately Harriet didn't go for the photo shoot, because then we could have done a "we did the nudes" joke. But
sorry, Don Kiefer, not Don West. Don West is another person in real life.
I was bummed Harriet didn't do the shoot because I wanted to see her. Yeah, because she's so hot.
I
can't overstate how straight I am.
Listen. We definitely want you to pose nude. Don't get us wrong.
We moved to Jersey.
we get a big gabagool.
Hey, bada bing, bada boom.
You know, my wife left me. Shit. Do we have any other spare notes, stray notes on this episode? It's really good. Basically, the sketch doesn't go to air. They fill that time with the spit take stuff, and then it wraps up with them setting up for the spit take on Harriet. And she's like, no, I don't want to get the virus.
Yeah, don't have a bunch of people spit on me on live television. What the hell?
Even if there was no virus. That's such a gross idea. Terrible.
Yep. Did you both know who this musical guest was?
Corinne Bailey Rae? I did.
Never heard of her.
I like her a lot. You should check her music out.
I had heard of her. That's about all I can say, because I'm not hip with the kids, I'm afraid.
She was popular at this time. Her main song
they were shooting it like, look who we got on the episode.
Yeah.
I was like, who is that?
Girl, Put Your Records On is the song that you've probably heard. Put your records on.
Sure.
Play me your favorite song. That song is her.
Okay. I see.
I specifically remember, this is just a weird story that I'll never get to share anywhere else. I used to watch a lot of VH1, and they had these preview of new artists, and it was like a 30-second spot just being like, here's what this artist is about. And they had one for The Fray, and they had one for Corinne Bailey Rae, and I always thought the clip they played of her was very good.
She was also a musical guest on SNL in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
That rules.
She was also on Project Runway.
I mean, I was on Project Runway. That ain't shit.
That show's good. Don't slander Project Runway.
Now, America's Next Top Model
is
a problem.
Yeah, that's no good.
No.
There was one other. Oh, I thought it was cute that it was raining and everybody was coming in from the rain totally drenched. How often does it rain in Los Angeles?
Not. I mean, it's not.
Literally, there are droughts, right?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're not in a drought, but yeah, it is fairly uncommon.
Yeah, I think from a script writing perspective, you have to have fun with and it's raining for the whole episode.
But I mean, I think that does happen sometimes, and so I extremely buy one Matt being like, who would have thought it would rain all day? Yeah, no, that's for here. That's very weird, and also no one having an umbrella totally makes sense.
Yeah, yep, that exactly. They're not used to it. We're not used to
every time
sun.
It rains here at my job at a major retailer. Suddenly, you get tons of people coming in being like, "Do you know where I could buy an umbrella? Do people sell umbrellas?" And you're like, "Yes."
Do you buy those?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a line. I think Danny was like, "Does anybody around here know how to operate an umbrella?"
I didn't catch that either.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Fantastic. And then my only other so I had a stray note here. There's a part that I think really effectively conveys how stressed out or how stressed you must be doing the 7-day production cycle, which is just a brief moment of Matt and Danny doing a walk and talk, and Matt goes, "Are you still holding Tuesday's paper?" Because it's Friday. And I'm like, oh shit, that is kind of relatable, because when you fall down a hole of working so much, and then you're like, what am I looking at? Fuck, this email's from 2 weeks ago. Oh, I'm responding to it like it's from today. I don't know what time it is. I definitely could relate to that. And I found some thematic parallels between Jordan being told that her audience is not... Well, Jack Rudolph, who I was very glad to see again. We didn't get enough of him, but we got him briefly. is like your audience is the investors. The people that you need to appeal to and interview well for are the people who ultimately like lead to you getting paid and keeping your job. So you have to do that. And I thought that was a cool parallel to like on Studio 60, everyone's audience is the American public and the TV watching public, whereas hers is like the 1%. Like she has a different type of people that she has to court and like be subservient to in a way.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I got. It's a dense ass episode. It's really fun and engaging. There's a lot of good moments, and yeah, I think this is like, again, these are an example of what Studio 60 could be. If they just kept this up, then this would be a great show. No more romance. No more Matt and Harriet romance.
What? Come on.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll keep it as a treat. National Umbrella Day 6. What is this?
Oh, you mentioned umbrellas. I searched WikiHow for umbrellas, and I found a WikiHow article on how to celebrate National Umbrella Day.
Oh, and there's a photo of a guy just sitting in his bedroom with an umbrella on the bed. That's great. You love to see that.
That's very fun.
Well, let's take it to the close, folks. Magellan, can you tell me what we're watching next time on Studio 60 on the Sunset Chats?
Surely I can. We're about to pass the halfway point of
Thank Christ.
Studio 60. Next episode is the halfway point because we are watching episodes 11 and 12 of Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. First, episode 11, The Christmas Show. As he helps prepare the holiday show, Matt remains determined to bring the Christmas spirit to Los Angeles. Meanwhile, Danny wrestles with his true feelings for Jordan.
Uh-oh. Wait, no. Fuck. No.
That sounds good to me.
Oh. 6 thoughts?
Yeah.
I try not to think.
Thank you.
As a rule.
All right. Good. That's good for the show. Then, episode 12, Monday. The cast and staff come back from their holiday break and prepare for the first show of the new year. Danny is in pursuit of Jordan, and Matt bids for a date with Harriet in an auction. And apparently, Monday is considered the first part of a 3-parter.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
They're going to say it's considered one of the best or worst episodes of the show. I was like,
I don't think people consider that with the
I don't think
show.
that's considered.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's out there doing rankings.
Yeah, fair. We could do that at the end, maybe. We'll think about it.
Yeah, I think so. Why not?
Where the rank of mobile suits, yeah.
Exactly. Same exact thing, 6. Yes. The tall geese wins either way. Cool.
Any suit that lets me move my arms is mobile enough for me.
I got it. That's a good joke you said. All right, so it's time for the plug sound, folks. Hi, everybody. It's Chats, and on our end, you can email us at chatspod@gmail.com. We are also on Twitter at chatspod, and you can rate our podcast on iTunes or your podcast platform of choice. And if you're listening to this, then we still have a wonderful Patreon over at patreon.com/chatspod, where we have all sorts of bonus content, and at just $3 a month, now, as of this recording, plus tax, unfortunately, you can get all of our bonus content, as well as a huge backlog.
Taxes are good.
No, taxes are good, but I just don't want people to have to pay more for the show.
Yeah, you're right.
6, what do you want to plug?
Well, so I'm on Twitter at Sixdetmar, SIXDETTAMAR. Most of my podcasts are at scanlinemedia.com or patreon.com/scanlinemedia. And we just did a little bit of a rework to the Scanline Patreon. Because of that tax thing, we were like, hey, we've got our $5 tier, which gives you access to all the shows that we do and a few other things. But we're like, oh, but with the addition of tax, like, again, taxes are good. I want to help pay for the government, but timing's not great. So what if we came up with a new tier that gave you all of the shows that we do, but just not some of the other miscellaneous benefits? So we now have a $4 tier that gets you Oops All Anime, Iris in Audio, which is where we talk about movies and TV, and Scanline Tabletop. Recommend it.
Huh. I'm into it. I'm excited about it, and I'm thrilled about it.
Well, thank you.
Now let's go around the table and do chatsums. Magellan, what is your chatsum for this episode?
This time it's a comedy-related chatsum. It's actually, I mentioned that I heard David Wayne on a podcast. Well, I'm going to tell you what podcast it was. It was the Vulture podcast, Good One, where if you haven't heard of it, basically what they do is they interview a comedian about a particular sketch, or if they're a stand-up comedian, a particular bit, or if they're like a comedy film director, a scene from a movie or something like that, and just kind of go through the process of where did this idea come from? What does it say about your sort of philosophy on comedy? And it's really cool. There are some episodes that I think are better than others. So it's one of those shows where you can just pick and choose like who are the comedians that you're most interested in. The David Wayne one is really good. So I'd recommend that one for sure. And then from there, you can kind of choose whatever seems most interesting to you. But yeah, good one.
Good one. No, that was a good one.
Thank you. In the David Wayne episode, he talks about this great classic state sketch called Taco Man. That's if you're looking for actually good sketch comedy, you should watch The State. And Taco Man's a good sketch.
Okay. I'll check it out.
It's about a mailman who delivers tacos.
I can relate. Oh, Uber Eats?
Sure.
Six, what's your chat for this episode?
So, I've been talking to a lot of folks lately. A friend of ours over at Abnormal Mapping is the Great Gundam Project is continuing. They're podcasting about every Gundam show. They got into Gundam Wing, which was the first show to hit the United States. They're very excited. Other people are very excited. But you know what? Talking to people about mecha, and I'm hearing these takes that are not stupid, just uninformed. And you know what? You should watch Mobile Suit Gundam 0079, the original Gundam. It's a good show.
But it's so old.
You know what? Sometimes age is good. Like Bradley Whitford. Some things get better with age.
Oh. Now you're selling me, pal. So what's this show about? I've never heard of mecha before. What could Mobile Suit Gundam be about?
So Mobile Suit Gundam is a show where the premise is that Earth is at war with space colonies. There's an issue of freedom, and maybe there's some complicated politics going on. This doesn't matter to Amuro Ray, who is just a teenage boy who is caught up in this conflict, who is accidentally roped into being the pilot of a super advanced war machine on a super secret military ship. And because of circumstance and because of the state of the war, which is very bad, he has no choice but to pilot this machine while coping with his own trauma and the horrors of becoming a soldier.
Oh.
And maybe psychic, because the show gets weird in a good way.
Who could say? And maybe he's just really good at intuiting other people's feelings. Who could say? That's fantastic. I can second that recommendation. Mobile Suit Gundam is a wonderful show. It's even if you don't like anime, it doesn't even look like anime because it's the 70s and it's got that like cooler look.
It definitely has a very Saturday morning cartoon feel.
Yes. I really like it. And watch the show. Don't watch the compilation movies.
Right. No, don't do the compilation. I mean, they're fine. It's just you're losing a lot.
Exactly. I have a chat if y'all will allow it.
I'll allow it,
and I'll call now.
I'll call.
So there's a little book from the olden times of 1815, and it's called Emma.
The Bible.
1815's The Bible. Yes.
It's a remake.
1815's. May I speak?
The Bible 2. Sorry, please go ahead.
It's called Emma. They made a movie. They made a bunch of movies. It's one of Jane Austen's most popular books. I've never read it. I've enjoyed Jane Austen here and there. I had the classic thing of like growing up as a little boy being like, Jane Austen's boring. I don't care about romance and fancy language. And then you get older and you realize that like so much of our modern media is basically like straight up remakes and reimaginings of Jane Austen stories. And, for example, Clueless is a straight-up remake of Emma. It's a reimagining of Emma that takes place in Valley Girl, California, instead of 1800s England. And Emma, for folks who don't know, is a story about a girl who interferes in the love lives of all of her other rich, aristocratic friends. And that kind of goes well for a while and then doesn't go well. So it's a bunch of teens falling in love with each other and courting each other and figuring out what love means. And it's really charming and funny. And in particular, this 2020 adaptation is stupendous because it's fucking beautiful. If I can use another cuss word, I'll get one of my rare cuss words. It's really well directed. I'm not familiar with the director Autumn DeWilde at all, but they just make it everything pops. It's very colorful. It has the like cadence of like a Wes Anderson movie almost, but without the like annoying tweeness of that. And it's just, it's a feast for the eyes and for the ears. It's got an amazing soundtrack. As soon as I finished it, I downloaded the soundtrack. If you haven't checked out any, like, if you're like usually opposed to period pieces, and you're willing to like deal with slightly like old British dialogue, which I think is pretty easy to grasp, you gotta watch 2020 Emma. It's very good and holds up super well as like an old story today.
Nice.
Check it out, kids. And that, dear listener, is going to do it for this episode of Studio 60 on the Sunset Chats. Let's restart the clock.
Nice.
I said it to myself for like 5 minutes on the train home today. It's like, let's restart the clock.
You have to leave that in. That episode weirdly made me nostalgic for doing spit takes of all things. So here's hoping that pretty soon we'll be able to do those things again in a hygienic way. I'm coming at you having just gotten my second dose of the vaccine, so we are well on our way. One half of the Chats kids are vaccinated at this point, so that is exciting. But I wanted to just share a couple more timely plugs here at the end of the show. So as we said on the episode, you can of course support us on Patreon if you'd like to know what's going on Patreon this month in February. The first Saturday of this month we put out our rankings of the Star Wars movies because we felt like it. Yesterday we put out a commentary of The Princess Bride for Valentine's Day, and it was actually the first time I had ever seen it. So if you would like to experience that movie through fresh eyes, that is how you could do that. And then next Saturday and the following Saturday, we're going to be piloting some mini-series that we might want to be doing for season 11, which will come up once Sunset Chats is over. The other exciting thing is that on Friday, we launched our Twitch channel for Chats. So every now and then, we're going to try to do some streams, 1-2 times a month, something like that. We'll see how it fits into our schedule. But if you go over to ChatsPod on Twitch, then you'll see an archive of our very first stream where we tried to play the Switch port of Super Mario 3D World. And I'll tell you right now, fair warning, we had some significant lag issues, which we pinned on Nintendo and then turned out to be the fault of my Wi-Fi. So yeah, you're not going to see buttery smooth gameplay. You're going to see us wrestling with some technical difficulties. But it ended up being pretty fun, I think. Partway through, also, I will be totally honest, I got so frustrated with the Wi-Fi situation that I kind of, gracefully bowed out of the stream. But luckily, we had guests with us. We had Six, who you've been loving on this season of Chats, and we had Jen, who is also from Scanline Media, along with Six, and they were wonderful pair of guests for that inaugural stream. So I highly encourage you to go check that out over on Twitch. And then if there are things that you'd like to see us play, let us know. But yeah, that's what I got. Thank you so much, folks, for listening to this episode of Sunset Chats. We appreciate your listenership and your support. And until next time...